Hi, everyone. This is another episode of just doing data analysis with Big Data Dork. We're going to start off and just talk about how to actually set up our analytic environment, right? And again, if you have to utilize SAS Studio, just go on this link, right? You're going to make an account totally free. And I will paste this in the link along with all the other links that you need. Right, once you create an account, you should have this dashboard where it says SAS Studio, SAS by access to host SAS servers. I like to keep this simple. Just click on SAS Studio. All right, and it's going to start loading. And once it starts loading, while it does that, I'm just going to go to our friend Google, and we're going to utilize the NHANES 3 data set. Right, that's the CDC. And I'm just going to click over here, right? This is the link to our data files. I think you can, I was using maybe this one. I don't think it matters, but I would go to this link, right? Come over here and notice we have 3 files we're going to work with: the adult file, the youth file, and the lab file. And now this is a DAT file. And we're going to have to convert this to an actual updated SAS file because it's 2020 and this data was from 1997. And since then, there's been a lot of changes, but that's not very hard. And then there's also SAS Code. And you're probably thinking, why am I getting SAS Code? Well, that's because the author of this SAS data set called Adult and youth and lab files actually put in some formats and in other words, there's some spacing, some length variables that will actually specify how to convert this data set into a SAS data set, and then we can actually do our analysis. And it's going to make a lot more sense when we actually do an example. And then there's documentation here. If you want to really get specific, if we go over here, I would not recommend printing this out. This is a very long data set. And usually what's in here are all the variable names. Notice it tells you the data file, the topic. It actually goes into every single thing that you need. It tells you where to find, if you go to your youth, what's in your adult data set, your youth data set, your lab data set. We're only going to take a look at a piece of this. We're not going to read through 462 pages. All right, I'm going to go back. Okay, I'm going to download. Just go to right click, save link as. And notice I have that .dat file. And I'm going to save it in a folder that I made called NHANES. Actually, let's actually go back a little. If I go to lessons, right, I have a SAS tutorial, and I just have NHANES DAT files. This is going to be sitting on my desktop, on my actual computer, not in the cloud. And you could save it wherever you want, but I like being very organized. And I actually have that file in here, so it's just this is kind of redundant. It's going to say replace, but I'm going to do the same with my youth. Save that in there, and my lab file. Right, that's still loading, and my lab file. And what's next? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click, save link as. Right, do the same exact thing, but with the actual adult SAS file. Right. Do the same thing, right click, save link as. The .SAS files are actually your syntax files. They're not actual data. It's the code, again, that the authors of these 3 data sets wrote. So in other words, someone who created the laboratory file, that file's called laboratory.dat, gave us some code which describes the formatting of that data set called laboratory.dat, which is right over here. right? And the next step we have to do is we have to analyze it. Now, this is SAS Studio, so everything is done on the cloud. The files have to sit on the cloud in order for us to analyze it. If you're using an actual local version of SAS, which is the paid version, you don't have to do this, right? You can just directly work. In other words, if SAS is actually installed inside your computer, right, not on a web browser, because right now we're working off a web browser in SAS, right? But if it's actually installed on your computer, you do not have to do this portion and upload it onto our cloud files. So this is your file, and I'm just going to create a folder in my cloud files, and I'm going to call it nhanes, right, download. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on this little button, and I'm going to upload some files here. All right, where am I going to choose these files? I'm just going to click over here, hold on to Shift, and it's going to upload all these files. And these are some of the data sets are a little bit large, so this may take a few minutes. Okay, now notice we've uploaded these files now from our desktop, right? And now they're sitting on the cloud, right? And now we can actually, the next step is to actually convert these DAT files into actual SAS usable files. In order to do that, right, I'm going to have to, well, first I'm going to ask myself, where am I going to dump these new files? Because I don't want to do this whole conversion process again. Right? I don't want to convert the DAT files to actual SAS files every single time I open up the cloud and do the analysis. I'd rather just convert them into an actual SAS file, and then I have those SAS files sitting on my cloud for research. Right? So I'm just going to right click here. I'm going to say new folder, right? And I'm just going to call it nhanes, right? And we'll call it nhanes. We'll just call it nhanes data sets. Okay. So I'm going to want to put it in here, right? But the question is over here, right? So this is where I'm going to want to put the actual SAS files inside this folder called nhanes dataset. And then I'm doing one more thing. I'm going to actually create another folder, right? And it's going to have my SAS syntax. And this is my personal SAS syntax that I'm going to use for data analysis. So I'm just going to create another folder over here called SAS syntax, right? And in here, I'm going to right click and have a new program, right? And we're not going to touch this program too just yet. We're going to come over here, right? Actually, you know what? Better yet, let's just come in here. Let's actually just utilize this program. So I'm going to create a library, right, in SAS. In other words, before we can do any manipulation and load permanent files, we have to actually utilize, we have to learn about libraries. If you look at this library, only things can be created and manipulated if they are part of the library. And when I say those things, I mean any data sets, right? So if I want to dump any data sets, right, if I want to create any permanent data sets, right, or do any type of SAS manipulation, I have to utilize libraries. There's a work library, which is a temporary library, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And we're going to create a permanent library. And the statement for that is called libname, for library name. I'm going to call this library name nhanes, and then I have to specify a location for this library, right? For example, I'm going to go to my server files and folders, and let's say I specify this as my library. I have to find its path. right? Once I run this, the little running man, notice we have a nice success window, no errors, and notice I created a library called NHANES. If I click on library now, notice we have NHANES. That wasn't there before. So next video, we are actually going to do the conversion process of converting these DAT files right over here, this one and this one, into a SAS format that's up to date, which is in what's the year? This year is 2021, right? So these are really old formats that I don't think SAS can handle anymore, right? So next video, we're gonna convert these into SAS usable files and then reference a library that's in this location, which we already did, and then put the actual per minute data sets, the SAS converted data sets that we can use for analysis, into this folder called NHANES dataset, right? And this folder called NHANES dataset right over here is actually named for a library called NHANES. So in other words, we created an NHANES library, right? It's called NHANES, and that location is actually this folder over here. So right over there. I'll see you in the next video.